You versus you is not a battle against the world, society, or circumstances. It is the most important war you will ever fight, the war between the person you are today and the person you could become tomorrow. Every dream you have, every goal you set, and every life you imagine is standing on one simple question: will you rise above your fears, excuses, and comfort, or will you stay trapped in the same version of yourself forever? Most people think their enemies are outside them: competition, lack of money, lack of opportunity, or bad luck. But the truth is, the biggest enemy lives inside their own mind. It is the voice that says not today, maybe tomorrow, you're not good enough, and what if you fail? This voice is subtle, convincing, and dangerous because it sounds like logic, but in reality, it is fear in disguise. The book You versus You teaches that your life does not change when circumstances change, your life changes when you change. Success is not about defeating others. It is about defeating your own laziness, your own self-doubt, your own procrastination, and your own negative thinking. When you win against yourself, the world automatically starts responding differently to you. Every morning, two versions of you wake up. One version wants comfort, sleep, entertainment, and easy pleasure. The other version wants growth, discipline, learning, and progress. One wants to stay small and safe, the other wants to expand and become powerful. The choices you make every day decide which version becomes your future. You versus You reminds us that motivation is temporary, but identity is permanent. If you see yourself as a disciplined person, you will act with discipline. If you see yourself as a winner, you will start making winning decisions. The battle is not about forcing yourself for one day. It is about becoming someone who naturally does what needs to be done. Fear is one of the strongest weapons your mind uses against you. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, and fear of success itself. The book explains that fear is not a stop sign, it is a signal that you are standing at the edge of growth. Every time you move forward despite fear, you weaken its control over you. Discipline is the bridge between dreams and reality. You can visualize success all day, but without consistent action, nothing changes. You versus You teaches that small daily actions, done repeatedly, are more powerful than rare moments of extreme effort. Winning the inner battle means showing up even when you don't feel like it. Your habits are the physical proof of who is winning the war inside you. If your habits are strong, your future will be strong. If your habits are weak, your future will be weak. The book emphasizes that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits. One of the most powerful ideas in You versus You is personal responsibility. No blaming parents, the economy, the past, or luck. When you fully accept that your life is your responsibility, you take back your power. The moment you stop making excuses is the moment you start making progress. At its core, You versus You is a message of hope and empowerment. It says you are not broken, you are not weak, and you are not behind. You are simply in a battle with your own potential. And the beautiful truth is, if you commit to growth, discipline, and self-belief, the version of you that wins will create a life beyond your current imagination. The greatest transformation in life does not come from a sudden miracle, it comes from daily decisions. Every time you choose to wake up on time, to work when it's uncomfortable, to learn when it's hard, you are voting for the stronger version of yourself. Over time, these small votes become your new identity. Your environment can either support your growth or sabotage it. The people you listen to, the content you consume, and the conversations you allow into your life all shape your mindset. You versus You teaches that if you want to upgrade your life, you must first upgrade your standards. The comfort zone is the most dangerous place to live. It feels safe, but it slowly kills your dreams. Inside the comfort zone, nothing challenges you, nothing stretches you, and nothing forces you to become more. Growth only happens when you are willing to feel uncomfortable on purpose. Self-talk is the language of the inner battle. The way you speak to yourself in moments of failure determines whether you quit or continue. If you criticize yourself harshly, you weaken your spirit. If you coach yourself with patience and strength, you build resilience. You versus you emphasizes that comparison with others is a trap. There will always be someone ahead of you and someone behind you. The only comparison that matters is between who you were yesterday and who you are today. Progress, not perfection, is the real victory. Pain is a part of growth, but suffering is optional. Pain teaches, strengthens, and shapes you. Suffering comes when you resist the lesson. The book explains that when you accept pain as part of the process, it loses its power to break you. Your past does not define your future unless you allow it to. Mistakes are not life sentences, they are lessons. You versus you reminds us that the strongest people are not those who never fail, but those who refuse to let failure decide their identity. Focus is the currency of success. In a world full of distractions, the ability to concentrate on what truly matters is a superpower. The book teaches that every time you protect your focus, you protect your future. Consistency is the secret weapon. Motivation may disappear, energy may fluctuate, but consistency builds momentum. When you show up every day, even with small effort, you create a rhythm that eventually becomes unstoppable. The inner war is not won in one day. It is won through patience, discipline, and faith in yourself. Each time you choose growth over comfort, courage over fear, and action over excuses, you move one step closer to becoming the person you were always meant to be. Every single person has moments in life where they feel stuck, powerless, or convinced that the world is against them. You versus you makes it clear that these moments are not signs of weakness, they are opportunities to discover strength you didn't know existed. The battle is not about circumstances, it is about perspective. It's about deciding, in the quiet corners of your mind, that you will not allow fear, doubt, or past failures to dictate the choices you make today. When you wake up every morning and tell yourself, I am stronger than my excuses, and I am capable of more than I've ever imagined, you begin to shift the energy of your life. Each thought you allow, each word you speak to yourself, becomes the foundation for either victory or defeat. And the book emphasizes that winning the inner war is not a one-time event, it is a relentless, daily practice of choosing courage over comfort, action over inaction, and belief over hesitation. Discipline is often misunderstood as rigid control or deprivation, but you versus you reframes it as a deep, liberating freedom. True discipline is the ability to act intentionally, even when impulses, emotions, or distractions beg you to stop. It's waking up early when you want to sleep, saying no to momentary pleasure for long-term gain, and consistently showing up even when progress feels invisible. The book demonstrates that discipline is not a punishment, it is the bridge between the person you are today and the person you were meant to become. Every act of self-control, no matter how small, compounds over time, creating momentum that eventually feels unstoppable. It is in these consistent, quiet victories that your future self begins to take shape, silently molding a life of purpose, confidence, and achievement. The voice inside your head can be your fiercest ally or your most brutal enemy. You versus you teaches that learning to manage this voice is perhaps the single most important skill for success. It whispers doubts, rationalizes procrastination, and convinces you to settle for less, but it can also be trained to encourage, guide, and remind you of your capabilities. By observing your thoughts without immediate reaction, choosing which narratives to feed, and deliberately focusing on solutions rather than problems, you reclaim power over your mind. This inner mastery allows you to navigate challenges with clarity, respond to adversity with composure, and approach life with a sense of control that most people never achieve. Every time you choose awareness over automatic reaction, you are literally reshaping the neural pathways of your brain, forging a stronger, wiser, and more resilient version of yourself. Fear, in its many forms, is the universal barrier between where you are and where you want to go. You versus you does not suggest that fear can simply be eliminated, because it cannot. It is wired into our survival. Instead, the book teaches that fear must be acknowledged, understood, and strategically faced. Every fear you confront, every uncomfortable situation you step into despite your hesitation, builds a muscle of courage. And courage, once developed, becomes a natural force that propels you forward, even in uncertainty. The moments of greatest growth in life are almost always those accompanied by discomfort, and the book repeatedly emphasizes that leaning into fear is the defining difference between those who live average lives and those who achieve extraordinary results. When you see fear as a signal of growth rather than a stop sign, the entire battlefield shifts in your favor. Habits are the physical representation of your inner victory or defeat. You versus you illustrates that no matter how much you read, plan, or dream, if your daily habits are weak, your potential will remain unrealized. Conversely, if your habits are strong, they carry you forward even when motivation fades or when challenges appear insurmountable. Each morning routine, each focused work session, each deliberate choice to learn and improve, even when it is inconvenient, becomes evidence that you are winning the internal war. The book reminds readers that real transformation is incremental, almost invisible in the short term, but overwhelmingly powerful when accumulated over months and years. This is why champions, leaders, and high performers succeed not because of talent alone, but because they've mastered the subtle, consistent behaviors that shape their identity and destiny. Pain and struggle are unavoidable, but you versus you reframes them as essential tools of growth rather than punishments. Life will always challenge you. It will test your patience, resilience, and determination. The difference lies in perception. If you interpret challenges as obstacles, you feel defeated. If you see them as opportunities to refine your skills, strengthen your mind, and expand your capacity, you become unstoppable. Every setback, failure, or moment of discomfort carries within it a lesson that can accelerate your growth if you are willing to pay attention. The book emphasizes that the path to mastery is not free of struggle. It is paved by those who endure, reflect, and persist with relentless focus on becoming the best version of themselves. Self-responsibility is the cornerstone of the philosophy in You versus You. External circumstances, luck, and other people will never determine the trajectory of your life. Your choices will. Taking complete ownership of your actions, thoughts, and results is not easy because it forces you to stop blaming, stop rationalizing, and stop waiting for external solutions. But it is also liberating because it returns your power. Once you accept that every victory or failure begins with you, you can stop feeling like a victim and start acting like a creator. This radical acceptance transforms the way you approach life because it shifts focus from what is happening to you to what you are doing in response, which is the ultimate measure of strength. Comparison is the thief of joy, and You versus You drives this point home with clarity. Social media, peer pressure, and cultural expectations constantly create illusions that someone else is ahead, more talented, or more deserving. The book teaches that the only meaningful benchmark is yourself, the person you were yesterday. By measuring progress against your own standards, you maintain focus, integrity, and motivation. Every improvement, no matter how small, is evidence that you are winning the internal battle. The moment you stop comparing and start measuring your growth against yourself is the moment true freedom and satisfaction emerge, and you begin living life on your own terms. The concept of delayed gratification is central to mastering You versus You. Immediate pleasure tempts you with comfort, distraction, or shortcuts, but it rarely leads to fulfillment. Long-term vision, on the other hand, requires patience, sacrifice, and persistence. The book explains that every decision to prioritize long-term growth over short-term ease compounds into exponential results. Each time you choose work over avoidance, learning over stagnation, and action over procrastination, you reinforce the neural pathways that define discipline, resilience, and mastery. Over time, this creates a self-perpetuating cycle where your future success becomes inevitable because you have trained yourself to act consistently in alignment with your highest goals. Ultimately, You versus You is a blueprint for self-mastery, teaching that the only competition that matters is the one within. It is not about being better than someone else. It is about being stronger, wiser, and more disciplined than the version of yourself that existed yesterday. Every thought, action, and habit contributes to this inner victory. The book challenges you to embrace discomfort, overcome fear, master your habits, and take radical responsibility for your life. When you commit fully to this inner work, external results naturally follow, your confidence grows, your impact multiplies, and your life begins to reflect the extraordinary potential that was always inside you. Victory, according to this philosophy, is not an event but a lifestyle, and the person who consistently chooses growth, courage, and action will always win the ultimate battle. The battle against themselves. One of the most powerful lessons in You versus You is that growth is uncomfortable, but comfort is dangerous. Most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort, seeking approval, and sticking to routines that feel safe. But safety rarely leads to greatness. The book emphasizes that the very moments that feel hardest, the mornings when you want to sleep, the tasks you want to avoid, the conversations you fear, are the exact moments that determine who you become. By stepping deliberately into discomfort, embracing challenges, and leaning into the unknown, you activate your potential in ways that comfort could never allow. Over time, these consistent choices compound into a life of purpose, influence, and achievement that feels effortless to others but is built on countless invisible acts of discipline and courage. Your mindset is the battlefield on which this war is fought. You versus You teaches that external success follows internal mastery. If your mind is cluttered with doubt, fear, or procrastination, no amount of external resources will deliver results. Conversely, a focused, resilient, and disciplined mind turns limited resources into extraordinary outcomes. Every decision to think positively, act intentionally, and stay committed strengthens neural pathways that reinforce confidence, clarity, and effectiveness. The book explains that mastery over your own mind is the most reliable predictor of long-term success because it influences every choice, action, and relationship in your life, creating a compounding effect that shapes your destiny. The principle of self-accountability is non-negotiable. Blaming circumstances, other people, or past failures is a slow form of surrender. You versus You emphasizes that true winners are those who take full ownership of their results, no matter how difficult the situation. This doesn't mean ignoring external factors, but rather understanding that your response is the only variable you can fully control. Every time you choose responsibility over excuse, you build trust with yourself, strengthen your integrity, and generate momentum that carries through challenges. The book teaches that self-accountability is both a shield and a weapon. It protects your potential from sabotage and equips you to act decisively, even when life is unpredictable. Procrastination is the silent killer of potential. You versus You dedicates extensive insight into how delaying action erodes confidence, self-respect, and progress. Each time you postpone a critical task, the inner voice of doubt gains strength, convincing you that future effort will magically be easier or more effective. The book challenges readers to disrupt this cycle by adopting immediate, purposeful action as a habit. By consistently choosing to start, even imperfectly, you condition yourself to value momentum over hesitation, results over excuses, and courage over comfort. These daily acts of deliberate action accumulate, ultimately creating a life where you are in control, unstoppable, and constantly moving toward your highest goals. Emotional resilience is another cornerstone of you versus you. Life will inevitably throw setbacks, criticism, and unexpected obstacles at you. The book teaches that resilience is not the absence of struggle, it is the ability to recover, adapt, and continue with strength. Every time you face disappointment without surrendering, every time you feel fear and act anyway, you are training your mind and body to handle higher levels of stress, responsibility, and leadership. Resilience becomes a superpower, allowing you to operate at peak performance in chaos, uncertainty, and pressure. The inner victory comes from knowing that no external event can dictate your inner state unless you allow it.
Clarity of purpose is the compass that guides every action in the book. You versus you emphasizes that vague goals, scattered efforts, and undefined priorities are the enemies of progress. When you clearly define your vision, articulate your mission, and break it into actionable steps, your mind naturally aligns your behavior toward those outcomes. Clarity creates focus, reduces wasted energy, and provides measurable milestones that reinforce motivation. The book repeatedly highlights that without this inner compass, even the most disciplined and hardworking person can wander aimlessly, but with clarity, even small actions compound into extraordinary results over time. Self-belief is the fuel that keeps the inner engine running. You versus you underscores that believing in your capacity to grow, adapt, and achieve is not optional, it is essential. Doubt will arise, failures will occur, and criticism will come, but an unshakable belief in your own potential allows you to persist despite the noise. The book explains that belief is both a shield and a magnet. It shields you from the paralyzing effects of fear and attracts opportunities because your actions align with confidence. Every choice to trust your own judgment, take responsibility, and act decisively reinforces this belief, creating a cycle of growth, achievement, and self-reinforcement. Time, energy, and focus are finite resources, and you versus you treats them as sacred. The book teaches that how you allocate your time and attention determines your life's trajectory far more than luck or talent. Protecting your energy from distractions, choosing priorities deliberately, and focusing on high-impact actions builds a life of intentional success. It's not about doing more, it's about doing what matters most, consistently, every single day. By mastering the allocation of your internal resources, you transform overwhelm into control, chaos into clarity, and potential into tangible results that are visible to everyone but understood by few. Gratitude and reflection are often overlooked, but they are vital in the internal battle. You versus you explains that taking time to reflect on progress, acknowledge victories, and appreciate the journey strengthens mental resilience and perspective. Gratitude reframes challenges as lessons, failures as guidance, and growth as a privilege rather than burden. This practice reinforces your identity as someone who is capable, adaptable, and continuously improving. Reflection allows you to course-correct without guilt, plan strategically, and maintain balance between ambition and well-being, ensuring that the inner battle is not just about success, but about sustainable mastery. Finally, the book concludes with a powerful reminder: the war is lifelong, but victory is inevitable for those who refuse to surrender to their lower self. Every day presents a choice: comfort or growth, fear or courage, inaction or deliberate action. You versus you teaches that by consistently choosing growth, taking responsibility, mastering your habits, and confronting fear, you transform not just your life, but your identity. The inner battle defines every external outcome. By the time you finish reading, or listening to, this book, you realize that the only opponent that ever truly mattered was yourself, and the only victory worth pursuing is the one that elevates you into the best version of who you were always meant to be.